the government of India's decision to revoke Article 370 and split the Indian administered Kashmir into two regions. They said that it's an internal matter of India, it's a sovereign matter, and Pakistan really has no business in meddling in the internal affairs of India. It's also accusing Pakistan of invoking an alarmist vision of what's happening in the state of in Indian administered Kashmir to the world. It says that it regrets Pakistan's action, but this statement clearly shows that India is not particularly perturbed by the action that Pakistan says that it will take, which means, for instance, curbing diplomatic ties, downgraded diplomatic ties, and also snapping all trade contact between the two nations. In fact, the trade volume between India and Pakistan is very marginal. So it's unlikely that it will have any impact really on the Indian economy. But then, of course, it's a symbolic and a really strong step taken by Islamabad, and India has responded.
Bianca, thanks very much. OK, here's the state of play as of where we are in Kashmir right now. This is what India considers to be its sovereign territory, but it is more complex on the ground. India administers part of the disputed Kashmir region, Pakistan the other. China also administers part of the territory. The Indian and Pakistani administered parts are separated by the internationally recognised line of control. Our correspondent Osama bin Javed is in Chakothy. That's a border village in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Osama, how's this playing out where you are? We're having comms issues there with Osama, clearly. We will go back to him live if we can. In the meantime, here's his report that he filed earlier, looking back at the past 24 hours or so.
Bibi Safina moved from Indian-administered Kashmir in the 1990s to this refugee camp. Her family has lived through the highs and lows of relations between India and Pakistan, but says this time it's different.
It's been 3 days since we have heard from my sister and her family. I heard rumours that 40 to 50 people have been killed. We don't know anything. Even the internet is shut. Are they even alive?
Her husband says they escaped Kashmir when he was tortured and had his fingers and toes broken by Indian forces occupying their lands.
All we want is freedom. For God's sake, is there anyone listening? Any Muslims all over the world, the UN? God will ask them on the day of judgment.
The conflict over Kashmir has separated many families for years. More than 35,000 people live in refugee camps on the Pakistani side of the divided region. Most people in Ambor camp are from Indian-administered Kashmir, although temporary structures have been turned into concrete homes, but almost every household has family or relatives still on the other side. They fear the worst as the Indian government's crackdown continues. Zahra Bukhari came here when she was just over a year old. She went to school in the camp and now teaches at a college for refugees. One of her brothers was killed before they moved, and her mother says Indian forces have killed other relatives in their fight for freedom. It's an emotional issue when she talks about not being able to contact her extended family because phone lines and the internet remains cut off.
What if they were burned alive? What if they were killed? We don't know anything about what's happening in our Kashmir. What's happening to our brothers, sisters and children? Does anyone care?
At the girls' school in the camp, children discuss politics as parents in most homes talk about a free Kashmir. A few weeks before the latest escalation, Sirat Farooq's relatives asked them not to call anymore because they fear harassment by Indian security forces.
They say if we talk to them, they will be detained, so we haven't spoken to them for many days. We are very worried, and we've seen on TV that people are being persecuted in Kashmir.
Even the children here know about how tensions have flared since constitutional changes by India to the status of Kashmir. Kashmiris here say India is holding 12 million of their people hostage and are calling on Pakistani government leaders to do more than the usual rhetoric. Well, Peter, we apologize for that earlier disruption. We are in the mountains close to the line of control, the dividing line between Indian-administered and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. The Pakistani government has been saying that it will not sever diplomatic ties, but it's also going to downgrade them, and it is cutting its trade relations, but it still reserves some cards, and it is going to be taking this case to the United Nations Security Council, and all of its allies across the globe to try and get them on board to what it calls an illegal action by the Indian government to annex a disputed part. Pakistan has been saying that the Indians are just violating United Nations Security Council resolutions and not adhering to bilateral agreements between the two countries, as they've taken this unilateral decision to take away the special status of Kashmir. We've been expecting more protests in Pakistan. We've been going through the roads, and people have been coming up in smaller groups across Pakistan administered Kashmir, taking out protests, demanding access to their relatives who are stranded on the other side, saying that almost 12 million people, 12 million Kashmiris are being held hostage by the Indian government.
Osama, thanks very much. OK, lots more ground still to cover for you here on Al Jazeera, including why Venezuelan government supporters are on the streets. Also ahead. The UN raises the alarm as gun battles break out in the Yemeni city of Aden between separatist fighters and pro-government forces.